still remember the first night we found the old baseball field behind the abandoned middle school. It wasn't supposed to be anything special, just a forgotten patch of town where time seemed to stop. The cracked parking lot stretched like broken stone skin, and the old school stood behind it with hollow windows staring into nothing. No signs of life, no sounds, just decay and silence. But beyond the building, through a narrow path of thick woods, there was something that didn't belong. An old baseball field. The fence was rusted and bent in places like it had given up years ago. Weeds swallowed the dugouts completely. The bleachers looked half collapsed, like they were slowly sinking back into the earth. Everything about that place felt abandoned, except for one thing: an orange lamp. It hung above the stands, flickering slightly, casting a weak but unnatural glow across the field. No one knew why it still worked. Maybe no one cared enough to shut it off. But every night it turned on like clockwork, as if someone was still using the field. That place became ours. Me, Johnny, and a few others didn't have anywhere else to go. Home wasn't comfort, it was something you escaped from. So we started meeting there at night, sitting under that orange light, smoking, laughing, and pretending life wasn't as heavy as it really was. But the woods around the field never felt right. There was always a moment when everything would go quiet, conversations fading out, laughter slowing down, even the insects seemed to disappear, and in that silence, a feeling would creep in slowly, like someone was standing just beyond the trees, watching, not moving, not breathing, just waiting. Johnny was the first one to ever speak it out loud. He tried to joke about it, but his voice didn't sound convinced. His eyes kept drifting back into the darkness, like he expected something to step out. A few days later, Johnny texted me late at night. 2 words: come out. I reached the field first. The orange lamp was already on, painting the empty bleachers in a dull, burning glow. I waited there, thinking he was just messing with me like usual. Minutes passed, then more. The field stayed completely still. No Johnny, no footsteps, no car lights in the distance, just silence that felt heavier than it should have been. When I called him, the phone didn't even behave normally. It didn't ring right. It just cut off like something had pulled the sound away. That was the first moment I felt it clearly. The woods weren't just empty. They were aware. And Johnny never showed up again after that night. But something about that place told me it wasn't finished yet. Not even close. And the orange light was still on, like it was waiting for us to come back. After Johnny texted me that night, something about it didn't sit right from the beginning. He wasn't the type to be vague. If he wanted to meet, he'd say it directly. If he was joking, you could hear it in his tone. But that message, just come out, felt different, short, empty, like it wasn't even meant for me. Still, I went. The walk through the woods behind the old school felt longer than usual. The trees were thicker than I remembered, branches hanging lower, scraping against my shoulders like they were trying to slow me down. My phone flashlight barely reached more than a few feet ahead, and even that light felt swallowed by the dark. When I finally stepped into the clearing, the baseball field opened up under that same orange glow. The lamp was already on. Always on. I sat on the bleachers and waited. At first, I told myself he was just late. Johnny had a habit of showing up whenever he felt like it. 5 minutes turned into 10. 10 turned into 20. I checked my phone more times than I needed to, like it was somehow changed the answer. Nothing. No texts, no calls, no footsteps behind me. Just that constant hum from the old lamp above the stands, buzzing faintly like it was struggling to stay alive. Then I noticed something strange. The woods didn't move at all. Not a single leaf shifted, no animals, no wind. It was like the entire world outside the field had paused, leaving only this small circle of light running on its own rules. I tried calling Johnny again. This time, the screen lit up, but the call didn't go through properly. It connected for a second, then dropped instantly, as if something had cut the signal mid-air. That's when I stood up. I remember looking toward the tree line and feeling it again, that pressure behind my eyes, like being watched from multiple directions at once. Not one presence, more than one, and they weren't far. I started walking back toward the woods when I saw it. Johnny's phone, sitting on the lowest steps of the bleachers, screen cracked, still glowing faintly. My stomach dropped immediately. I didn't pick it up right away. I just stood there staring at it, waiting for something to make sense. But nothing did. The field stayed silent. The orange light stayed steady. Then behind me, somewhere deep in the trees, I heard something. Not footsteps, not movement. A soft sound, like someone trying to imitate breathing. Slowly, I backed away without turning my back to the field. Every instinct in me screamed to leave, but my legs felt heavy, like the ground itself didn't want to let me go. When I finally reached my car and drove off, I kept checking the rearview mirror. The field stayed lit the entire time I left, like nothing had happened. But Johnny never replied again, and by morning, he was gone. Not just missing from my phone, missing from the world entirely. That was the first time I understood something I still can't explain. Whatever was watching us from those woods, it didn't just take him. It waited for him to be alone, and it chose the exact moment no one else would be looking. Next morning didn't feel real. It started like any other day. Sunlight, noise, normal life trying to pretend nothing had changed. But Johnny not answering his phone kept pulling me back into the night before, like my mind refused to accept it was over. By noon, his mom had already posted online asking if anyone had seen him. By evening, the police were involved. And by nightfall, the abandoned baseball field was no longer just our place. It was a search zone. Flashlights cut through the woods behind the old school. Officers called his name into the dark, voices echoing off trees that gave no answers back. People from town showed up too, standing at the edges like they were afraid to step too far in. I stayed back at first, watching, because something about that place felt different in daylight, but not safer, just more exposed, like the darkness at night had been hiding something that was now trying not to be seen. They searched the field first, the bleachers, the dugouts, the fence line. Nothing. No phone signal trace, no footprints leading out clearly, no signs of struggle. Just empty dirt and rusted metal under a sun that made everything look normal again, like nothing bad could ever happen there. But I knew better. At one point, I stepped closer when no one was looking. That's when I noticed it. The orange lamp was still there, off during the day, but waiting, like it only belonged to night. An officer asked me if I had seen anything unusual the night before. I almost told him everything. The silence, The feeling, the phone call that didn't feel like a call. But I stopped myself, because even saying it out loud made it feel less real and more dangerous. As the search continued for days, the woods slowly turned into something worse than empty. They turned into disappointment. Every hour that passed made it more obvious no one was finding Johnny. No one was even finding proof that something happened at all. No tracks, no struggle, no direction, just absence. And that's when the questions started changing. Not, where did he go, but did he even come here? That question made my stomach turn every time I heard it, because I knew the answer. He did come. I saw him, or at least I saw what answered his message. After 2 weeks, the search slowed down. Flyers went up around town. People stopped showing up in numbers. The forest returned to its usual quiet, like it was relieved to be left alone again. But I wasn't, because every time I closed my eyes at night, I still saw that field, still saw the orange light, and still felt like something was waiting under it, pretending nothing had happened. Like Johnny was just the beginning of something the woods had been planning for a long time. After the search officially ended, the town slowly moved on. That's what towns always do when something doesn't get solved. They bury it under routine. New problems replace old questions. People stop asking because asking doesn't change anything. But I couldn't move on, not even close. A few nights after everything went quiet again, I found myself standing at the edge of the woods behind the abandoned school. I didn't plan it. I just ended up there, like something had pulled me back without asking permission. The trees looked different at night now. Not alive exactly, not dead either, just still in a way that felt intentional. Every step toward the field felt heavier than the last. My flashlight barely worked, flickering like it didn't want to be there. And the deeper I went, the more I started noticing something strange. No insects, no wind, no sound at all. Even my own footsteps felt muted, like the forest was swallowing them before they could escape. When I finally stepped into the clearing, I stopped immediately. The baseball field was lit, not by the sun, by the orange lamp. It was on again, but nobody had been here to turn it on. The glow stretched across the empty bleachers like it was waiting for an audience that never left. The field itself looked exactly the same, but wrong in subtle ways I couldn't explain at first, like the shadows didn't match the objects casting them. I stood there for a long time, not moving. Then I saw something that made my chest tighten. 3 figures sitting in the bleachers, perfectly still. Too still. They weren't looking around, they weren't talking, they weren't reacting to anything. They just sat there under the orange light like they had been placed there instead of arriving on their own. And then there was the 4th one. He was standing near the dugout, moving. Not normally. He shifted in small, uneven motions, stepping forward, then stopping halfway, then turning his head slightly too late, like his body wasn't fully synced with itself. And then he did something that made my stomach drop. He started laughing. Not loud, not natural, like someone trying to remember how laughter works. I should have left right then, but I didn't, because something about him felt familiar. Not his face, not his shape, something deeper, like recognition without memory. The moment he turned toward me, everything in the field seemed to tighten. The 3 sitting figures didn't move, but I swear the shadows around them shifted closer, just slightly, like they were leaning in, watching what I would do next. And I understood something I didn't want to understand.
Johnny wasn't just gone. He had become part of what was sitting there, and the field was no longer empty even when it looked like it was. It was always occupied, even when no one admitted it.
I didn't run right away. That's the part I still can't explain to myself. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to leave the moment I saw those figures in the bleachers. But my legs didn't respond like they belonged to me. It felt like the air around the field had thickened, like moving through it required permission. The orange light above us kept buzzing softly, that same unstable hum, like it was breathing. The man in the dugout tilted his head again, slower this time, as if he was studying me the way someone studies a mistake they don't understand yet. His movements weren't fully human, not stiff like a robot either. Something in between, like a memory of a person instead of a person itself. Then one of the seated figures shifted, just slightly, a shoulder dropping an inch, but it felt louder than a gunshot in that silence. I took a step backwards, and that's when the entire field reacted. Not dramatically, not visibly at first, but the feeling changed instantly, like the space itself had noticed I was trying to leave. The orange light flickered once, just once, and in that flicker, I saw something I wasn't supposed to see clearly. The figure in the dugout wasn't alone. There were more shapes behind him, not fully formed, not fully visible, just outlines layered into the darkness, standing too still to be alive and too organized to be random. I backed into the trees without turning around, step by step, slow enough not to trigger whatever I was convinced would happen if I moved too fast. The moment I crossed the tree line, the sounds of the forest returned instantly, as if someone had flipped a switch. Crickets, wind, distant rustling, normal life pretending it had never stopped. I ran the rest of the way to my car, didn't look back once, but even as I drove away, I could still see it in my mind too clearly. The orange light staying behind, not fading, not dimming, just waiting in the middle of nowhere like it expected me to return. And that night, for the first time, I started to believe something I didn't want to accept. Johnny didn't disappear into the woods, disappeared into the field, and whatever was sitting there under that light had learned how to keep people from leaving. The upcoming events in this story have stolen the sleep of many. Where are you sitting? How terrified do you feel? Comment below. If you're new, follow now. That summer changed everything, even before we realized it. I was 19, working an internship near the Kennedy Space Center with a few other guys from different towns. We were exhausted most nights, sunburned, half asleep, living on cheap food and caffeine. That's probably why Marcus's idea didn't sound dangerous at first. He found it online, a place deep in Florida called Tate's Hell State Forest. He said it was perfect for stargazing. No light pollution, no traffic, no people. Just open sky and silence. It sounded like exactly what we needed after weeks of non-stop work. Nobody mentioned the name at first. Tate's Hell. It only sounded like a joke until we were already driving toward it. By the time we reached the entrance road, the sun was gone and the forest had swallowed everything outside our headlights. Trees on both sides looked too close together, like they were leaning inward to watch us pass. The deeper we went, the quieter the world became. No radio signal, no passing cars, no lights except ours. Around 2 a.m., we finally found a clearing wide enough to stop. It felt perfect at first. The sky above us looked unreal, thick with stars, sharp enough to feel close. For a few minutes, nobody talked. We just stared upward, pretending we weren't tired, pretending the world was simple again. Then Sam spoke through the walkie-talkie. His voice cracked slightly. "Guys, headlights." We all turned. Far down the dirt trail behind us, a single vehicle was sitting still. An old pickup truck. Engine off, lights off, just there. Marcus laughed at first, trying to convince himself it was nothing, but nobody else laughed with him, because nothing about that road made sense. No houses nearby, no park entrance, no reason for anyone to be out there at that hour. I flashed my headlights once, then twice, then 3 times. A signal, a warning. The truck didn't respond. It just stayed still, like it was watching us back. And then the doors opened. Slowly, too slowly. 3 figures stepped out. They didn't speak. They didn't wave. They didn't even look at each other. They just stood there, facing us, like they already knew exactly where we would go next. And that was the first moment that night stopped feeling like a camping trip and started feeling like something else was already following us before we even
After the
arrived.
truck stopped, nobody in our car said anything for almost 10 seconds. That kind of silence doesn't feel normal in a group. It feels like everyone is waiting for someone else to confirm it wasn't real. But it was real. The 3 figures were still standing on the dirt road behind us, not moving, not reacting, just present. Sam finally broke the silence over the walkie-talkie, his voice tighter than before. "Something's wrong. We leave now." Marcus didn't argue this time. He just grabbed the gear and threw it into the back seat. The energy shifted instantly, from curiosity to survival. That's when the forest changed too. At first it was subtle, too subtle, like the darkness between the trees had become denser, less empty. Then came the sound. Not footsteps, not branches breaking. Whispers, low, distant, overlapping voices that didn't seem to come from one direction. It felt like the entire forest was speaking at once, but not in any language we understood. Got in the cars, started driving. Fast, too fast for a dirt trail that narrow. For a few minutes it seemed like we lost them. The road twisted deeper into the swamp, trees closing in tight enough that our headlights barely reached past the hood. Then Marcus spoke again. "They're behind us." I looked into the rearview mirror. The same headlights, closer now, too close. The truck wasn't speeding. It wasn't trying to pass us. It was just following at a steady distance, like it knew exactly how much pressure to apply without forcing us to stop. That's when Sam said something I'll never forget. "They're laughing." At first, I thought he was panicking, hearing things. But then I rolled my window down slightly, and I heard it too. Not directly from the truck. From the forest, from the sides of the road, soft laughter, broken whispers, and something else underneath it, like chanting that didn't match any rhythm I'd ever heard before. The deeper we went into Tate's hell, the more it felt like we weren't escaping. We were being guided, not chased, guided. Like the forest already knew where we were going to end up, and it was simply making sure we arrived. And that's when I realized something that made my hands go cold on the steering wheel. We were no longer driving away from them.
We were driving wherever they wanted us to go. At some point, the road stopped feeling like a road. It's hard to explain exactly when it happened. One moment we were pushing forward through narrow swamp trails, headlights cutting through thick fog, the truck still behind us like a shadow that refused to detach. And then, everything felt the same. Not similar. The same. The trees, the bends, the broken branches hanging over the path, even the pattern of mud under the tires. It started repeating in a way my brain couldn't ignore anymore. Marcus noticed it first. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered, checking his GPS again and again like it might suddenly change its mind. No signal, of course. But it wasn't just that. The road itself felt wrong now, like we were circling inside something instead of moving through it. Every turn started looking familiar. Every stretch of swamp felt like something we had already passed minutes ago. Then Sam shouted over the radio, "Guys, headlights again." We looked back. The truck was still there. But now there was something worse. A second pair of headlights appeared farther behind it. Then another. Not speeding, not closing in aggressively, just appearing, like the forest was filling itself with them. Marcus tried to accelerate harder, but the ground got worse. Thicker mud, deeper ruts, branches scraping violently against the sides of the car. It felt like the environment itself was reacting to us trying to escape. Then the radio crackled. A sound came through. Not words at first, just breathing. Slow, controlled, almost amused. Sam whispered, "They're not driving anymore." "What do you mean?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately. Then he said it. "They're just there." As if that explained everything. That's when I noticed something terrifying. The trucks behind us weren't matching our turns perfectly. They were ahead of our turns, like they already knew which direction we were going before we chose it. The forest around us grew tighter, darker, more silent again. Even the laughter stopped. It was replaced by something heavier, expectation. Like we were being led somewhere important, somewhere final. And no matter how fast we drove, no matter how sharp the turns became, we never actually got closer to escaping, because escape wasn't part of the route anymore. We were already inside it. Marcus slammed the brakes so hard the tires skidded across wet mud. For a second, everything went silent except the sound of the engine struggling to stay alive. We had hit something we couldn't ignore anymore. The road, if you could still call it that, just ended. Not blocked, not damaged, just stopped existing in front of us like someone had erased it from the forest. Beyond the headlights was only swamp water and tangled roots stretching into darkness. No path forward, no path back. Sam's voice came through the radio again, but it sounded different now, less panicked, more confused. "Guys, I don't think we're on the same route anymore." Marcus turned the wheel slightly, trying to reverse, but the tires spun uselessly in mud that felt deeper than it looked. The car didn't move the way it should have, like the ground was holding us. That's when the truck headlights behind us stopped as well. All of them, perfectly still. No engine noise, no movement, just light hanging in the fog, like eyes that refused to blink. Then, something strange happened. The forest went completely quiet. Not slowly, instantly. Even the insects stopped. Even the wind disappeared. It felt like someone had pressed pause on the entire world except us. And in that silence, the whispering started again. But this time, it wasn't around us. It was inside the car. Not from the radio, not from outside,
from somewhere closer. Marcus whispered, "Do you guys hear that?" Nobody answered because we all did. It sounded like multiple voices layered together, speaking too softly to understand, but too intentionally to ignore, like they were repeating something just beyond comprehension. Then Sam's walkie-talkie cracked loudly. A single word came through, not shouted, not spoken, delivered. Found. Marcus looked at me, I looked at him, and in that moment, none of us needed to ask what it meant. The trucks weren't chasing us anymore. They had already arrived, and we were no longer being followed through the forest. We were being held inside it.
We didn't move for a long time. The engine stayed on, but nobody trusted it anymore. It felt like a machine running inside something that didn't follow normal rules. Outside the windshield, the swamp didn't look like nature anymore. It looked staged, too still, too arranged, like the trees and water had been placed there for a purpose instead of growing on their own. Marcus finally spoke, voice low. "We need to get out, now, even if we have to walk." Sam shook his head immediately. "No, look behind us." We all turned. The headlights of the trucks were gone, completely gone. Not turned off, not reversed, just absent. That should have been a relief, but it wasn't, because silence like that doesn't mean safety. It means something has stopped needing to follow you. Marcus tried the ignition again. The engine coughed, struggled, then finally turned over. We reversed slowly. Too slowly. The mud should have trapped us, but suddenly it didn't feel as deep anymore. The car moved easier than before, like the forest had changed its mind about holding us. We followed the faint direction we thought we came from, but every turn felt unfamiliar now. Even the trees seemed different when we passed them again. Then we saw it. A clearing. Perfectly round. Too clean. No swamp water, no thick roots, just open ground surrounded by dense forest like a boundary had been drawn intentionally. And in the center, no trucks, no people, nothing. Just an empty space under dim fog that seemed to glow faintly from nowhere. Marcus stopped the car. Nobody spoke, because we all felt it at the same moment. We hadn't found the clearing. The clearing had formed around us.
The upcoming events in this story have stolen the sleep of many. Where are you sitting? How terrified do you feel? Comment below. If you're new, follow now.
After that night, I stopped trusting long drives. Even normal roads started feeling wrong, like at any moment they could turn into something else and I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. That was months later, back in my hometown. I told myself everything in Tate's hell was just exhaustion, stress, bad timing. That's what people say when their brains refuse to accept something real. But deep down, I knew I wasn't done with it. Not yet. It came back in pieces first. A sound that didn't belong. A reflection that lingered too long. Then the feeling again, like someone was standing just out of sight, waiting for me to notice them. One night in December, I was driving home late, low on fuel, when I stopped at a small gas station off Highway 90. The place was almost empty. One attendant inside, one car at the far pump, everything else swallowed by quiet darkness. I went inside to grab a drink just to stay awake. That's when I saw him, standing near the coffee machine, not moving, just watching me. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks again, but the longer I looked,
the more certain I became that it wasn't imagination. Same face, same expressionless smile that didn't belong in a normal human moment. It was the man from the field, the one who used to stand under the orange light, the one who danced wrong. My grip tightened on the drink without me realizing it. He didn't blink, didn't look away, just studied me like he was confirming something. Then he turned slowly toward the exit. No rush, no panic, like he already knew I would follow. And I did. Outside, the cold air hit harder than expected. The parking lot was empty except for one vehicle near the pumps, a dark pickup truck, engine running, waiting. The moment he stepped into it, my stomach dropped because I recognized it immediately. Even from a distance, the shape, the dent, the way the rear frame sat slightly uneven. It wasn't just a truck. It was something I had already seen before, something that shouldn't have been here. And when it pulled away into the dark road beyond the station, I understood the worst part. Whatever had been in that field had never stayed there.
I didn't follow immediately. I sat in my car for almost a minute, engine running, hands frozen on the steering wheel, watching the taillights disappear into the dark like they were never meant to be caught. But something inside me wouldn't let it end there. So I drove. Not fast at first, just steady, like I was afraid the road itself would react if I pushed too hard. The highway was almost empty that night, just long stretches of black asphalt and occasional broken streetlights flickering like they were struggling to remember how to work. No sign of the truck, no sign of anything. Then my headlights caught something ahead, a shape at the edge of the road, parked, still, the same pickup. I slowed down instinctively, heart already reacting before my mind could process it. As I got closer, I noticed something worse. The truck wasn't just parked, it was waiting in a position that looked intentional, angled slightly toward the road, like it had been placed there for a reason. No driver inside, no movement, just presence. I stopped a few meters away, and that's when the engine of my own car suddenly felt too loud, too exposed, like it didn't belong in that moment anymore. The truck's rear license plate came into view, and everything inside me went cold, because I recognized the number. 4-Pack 207. Johnny's plate. The same one I had seen years ago in the abandoned school parking lot. I got out without thinking. Bad decision, I know that now. The air outside felt heavier than it should have. Not cold, just dense, like breathing took effort. The truck doors were slightly open, but there was no sign of whoever had been driving it. No footsteps in the dirt, no sound in the trees, nothing. I walked closer anyway. Every step felt like I was being watched from multiple directions at once. Not by something visible, but by something that understood exactly what I was doing. When I reached the back of the truck, I saw something that made my vision blur for a second. The paint. It wasn't new. It was layered, like the vehicle had been changed, repainted, rewritten more than once, like it had belonged to different lives, different people, different missing names. And then, from inside the cab, a soft movement. Not sudden, not violent, just slow, like something inside was finally deciding whether I was worth acknowledging. I didn't wait to find out. I ran, and behind me I heard the engine turn on without anyone touching it.
After that night, I stopped sleeping properly. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same thing: the empty driver's seat, the slightly open truck door, and that feeling of something inside deciding whether to move or not. But what bothered me most wasn't fear. It was recognition, like I was forgetting something important that my brain kept trying to hide from me. A few months passed. Life tried to continue like nothing happened. That's what it always does. Work, noise, people talking about normal things while your mind is stuck somewhere else entirely. One evening, I was cleaning out old school stuff from a drawer I hadn't touched in years. Old papers, old photos, a yearbook I didn't remember keeping. I almost didn't open it. Almost. But I did. At first, everything looked normal. Smiling faces, sports teams, clubs, names I barely remembered. Then I reached the sports section. A group photo. Baseball team. The players standing under stadium lights, frozen in a moment that used to mean nothing. But my eyes stopped immediately, because in the background, slightly out of focus, half hidden near the bleachers, was him, the dancing man, not part of the team, not smiling like the others, just standing there in janitor clothes, watching the camera like he knew exactly when he would be noticed years later. My throat tightened. I flipped back and checked again, thinking maybe I was imagining it, but he was still there. Same face, same unnatural calm, like he didn't belong in the memory, but had always been inside it anyway. I started searching the name under the photo. Nothing. No record, no mention, not even in the index. It was as if the school had photographed someone who officially never existed. That's when I started digging deeper. Old attendance records, digital archives, anything I could find. But every trace of him collapsed into blank gaps and missing data fields, like the system itself refused to acknowledge he had ever been real. And that's when something clicked in my mind. The field, the orange light, the missing people, Johnny, Eric, the trucks. It wasn't random. It was catalogued, like something was collecting absences instead of lives. And I had already seen its face before I ever knew to be afraid of it.
I didn't go back to the field for a long time after that. Not because I was safe, but because I was trying to convince myself distance mattered. It didn't, because it started coming closer instead. Small things at first, a reflection in a store window that stayed a second too long, a parked car that looked familiar but changed shape when I looked again, a feeling in crowded places that someone was standing just outside my attention, watching me without needing to move. Then one morning, just before sunrise, I made a mistake. I drove past the old abandoned school without planning to, and something inside me told me to stop. I don't know why I listened, but I did. The parking lot was empty, same as always. Cracked concrete, broken fence, the woods behind it standing still like they had never changed. But the moment I stepped out of the car, I knew something was different. No birds, no wind, not even the distant hum of morning life from the town, just silence that felt intentional. I walked toward the woods anyway, each step slower than the last, because I already knew what I was going to see. And when I reached the clearing, the baseball field was there, exactly the same. The rusted bleachers, the overgrown dugouts, and above it all, the orange light, already on, even in daylight. That shouldn't have been possible, and yet it was glowing like the sun didn't matter anymore. 3 figures sat in the bleachers, still, unchanged, like they had never left. And then the 4th one appeared near the dugout, the dancing man. But this time he didn't dance. He just stood there, watching, waiting. And slowly I realized something worse than before. He wasn't reacting to me like I was new. He was reacting like I was expected, like this moment had already happened somewhere else, and I was just arriving late to it. Then the orange light flickered once, and for a split second I saw something behind them, more shapes, more outlines, all sitting, all still, like the field had never been empty at all, like it only looked empty when it wanted to. And then I heard my name, not from one direction, from everywhere, quiet, close, familiar. And I understood. I hadn't come back to the field. The field had called me back.
I should have turned back the moment I heard my name. But by then, it didn't feel like I had a choice anymore. My body moved forward anyway, step by step, like the ground under the field had already decided where I was allowed to go. The orange light above the bleachers buzzed louder than before, a low electric hum that seemed to vibrate inside my skull. Everything beneath it looked sharper now, too defined, too real, like the world outside the glow didn't matter anymore. The 3 figures in the bleachers still hadn't moved, but I could feel them watching. Not with eyes, with awareness. The dancing man stood near the dugout, motionless for the first time I had ever seen him. No twitching, no strange laughter, just stillness that felt worse than movement, like he was finally done pretending. Then I saw something I will never forget, a shape in the empty seat beside the others. Johnny, or what used to be him. He didn't look like a missing person anymore. He looked like something that had been left too long in one place, slowly becoming part of it. Not alive, not gone, just held. His head tilted slightly toward me, not a greeting, a recognition. And suddenly everything I had avoided understanding snapped into place. The field wasn't a place where people disappeared. It was a place where they were kept. Not physically, something worse. Like their existence had been rewritten into the structure of that place. The light, the bleachers, the silence between sounds. And the dancing man wasn't just watching. He was maintaining it, keeping it stable, like a caretaker of something that should never be disturbed. The orange light flickered again, and this time it didn't feel like electricity. It felt like attention shifting fully onto me. The wind stopped completely. The woods behind me went silent. Even my own breathing sounded distant, like it didn't belong to me anymore. And I understood the final truth as clearly as if it had always been written there. People don't get lost at that field. They get added. And once you're seen under that orange light, you don't leave. You just stop being remembered outside of it.
The last thing I saw before everything blurred was the dancing man taking one slow step forward. Not dancing anymore, just approaching, like the story was finally closing around me, and the orange light kept burning, still on, still waiting for the next name.
And so tonight's story comes to an end, but the deeper the silence, the louder the fear. Follow us for more nightmare-fueling stories. Only the brave survive.